Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of the Shannara Chronicles. Great finale, and obviously I'm saying season finale, but it's like the season finale and the episode 9 and episode 10 because it was a back-to-back episode. But I'm kind of roping that all together in the finales. I kind of do that from time to time, and I figure I might as well do that because I mean it's all technically all the finale in my eyes, but nevertheless a great finale. A lot of surprises in this episodes. A lot of stuff I didn't see coming. First of all, the Bandon storyline. Didn't see things kind of turning out like that for Bandon. I figured he'd turn against like the Warlock Lord in the end, but I was gonna get it was gonna be like in the final battle confrontation. Then Bandon was like, no, maybe he was playing along the entire time, which it seems like that might be to a degree what he was doing, but because basically for him he spent so much of his time being controlled by others, whether it's his parents or Al-Anon, and it's like it's kind of similar to Eritrea's story actually, like of the sense of like no one gets to tell me who I get to be, and for him it's just like I brought you back because I needed you to make me more powerful so no one would hurt me, but it's like if you want power you got to take it for yourself. And for him, it was also about taking, because the whole Titania situation still affected him. It's like, plus what you did to her. So he tried to find him. I was like, at first I was like, oh man, are we going to have a twist here where it's like he actually kills the Warlock Lord and actually becomes the Warlock Lord himself? I'm like, whoa. And then it's like, nope, Bandon ends up dead. It's like, wow. I mean, it's sad that ultimately it came down to him like that. But I guess ultimately it's like, it was always going to end that way for him. Just kind of. It's sad because it's just like Bandon's story wasn't supposed. I mean, I guess that's kind of the thing of like Bandon's story is like, you know, it could have easily gone down the right path just as easily it went down the wrong path. And it's so sad because Al-Anon feels so bad because he feels like he failed Bandon seeing his body there and everything. So what I was also surprised about too is how many damn Crimson members are left too. Like I didn't, because they were all in Lee, and I was like, right, oh, there's a whole bunch of them there, aren't there? Because I was like, I thought the ones that were with Riga were the last, like the ones that were with Riga that got wiped out. I thought that was a good chunk of them going. Then I thought the same thing for because I thought most of them kind of got wiped out when Bandon first showed up. I figured that was the case. It turns out, well, because every time we see the like Crimsons, they always end up getting wiped out in large groups. Obviously, like from the Grey Mark episode when like the others were escaping with Al-Anon, there are a lot that died then. When Bandon came, a lot died then. When the last episode, when Riga and the other Crimsons came back, they got wiped out. But there were the ones that were taken down by Slanter and Jax when they were rescuing Meredith and Al-Anon, and then it's like, oh, there's still more of them. So those who are remaining, it seems like they're kind of on the good side now because, you know, I love what Jax did, kind of showing them Riga's head is like, you know, cut off the head of a serpent, you know, the body just flails around essentially. But rather than killing them, they all lived. It's like, okay, we gotta join together to face his evil, which I'm surprised they didn't do what they kind of did with season 1. I guess it kind of fit more like the Warlock Lord's style of like fighting alone, I guess, because it's part of his thing of like him always doing everything alone. Because like you look at Dagdamore and like Arbalon, there was like a full-on war between the demons and the elves in that situation. Because they were coming together, but they ultimately never had to fight anybody. But I guess maybe given enough time, maybe he would have raised an army. I don't know, or whether he would have just handled things all his own. I'm not sure. We finally kind of got that moment I was wondering about the whole Coughlin situation, which Coughlin turned out to be a good guy. I had a feeling like there's always a situation where I'm like always doubting someone. It's like, no, Coughlin ended up being a good guy. It was interesting seeing him and Al-Anon interact. And it is like, it isn't a situation. So like, it's because cause that's why I'm wondering how, I guess once you leave like the druid world, like leave that life as a druid like Coughlin did, you never have to worry about that. Because for Al-Anon, it's because he didn't go into the druid sleep. The reason why his situation was happening, he was losing his powers. It's almost like, basically you can think of like a druid as a battery, and that going into the sleep, you know, restores their magic. But he was so focused on trying to stop Bandon to make up for his mistake to correct it that he didn't do that. So I also appreciate the line from Will being like, "Whoa, did you just praise me? Did you just throw a compliment my way? Did you give me no, it wasn't that. It was like, did you just give me a pep talk?" And he's like, "Wow, no more like, oh, you got so much a long road ahead. You got so much to learn." It's kind of sweet that even at the end, like him and Al-Anon were able to kind of come together. Like they had their differences of opinions, they had their problems. Obviously, this season focused on that, but ultimately, it just, I don't know. It was nice to see that kind of come together. I mean, especially considering the fact is, you know, Shay and Al-Anon are now Will and Al-Anon, which now translates into Will and Marith, because she had to stand, as a druid by the Shannara's side when Al-Anon died. Because it's so interesting, because, well, on multiple levels, that whole fight was sick. Because also when Marith went all like dual swords, picked up her dad's sword too, I was like, that's so sick. I think there's still that moment of hesitation because he looked like Al-Anon and kind of stopped her. And I guess that was that moment where he was able, because obviously she had, like, things are just working out for her. Like, she's got her dad in her life again. She hasn't had him most of her life, but, he ended up sacrificing himself to save her. Which you had that thing where, the Warlock Lord was kind of like, oh, the fact of the matter is, like, I'm sending you to the third circle of the forbidding, which I'm guessing is kind of like, I don't know if it's necessarily the afterlife. It seems like it might be a sealed off kind of dimension in itself in particular. Maybe it is kind of about death, maybe it is kind of an afterlife of sorts, but I'll kind of dive into that later on because I got some thoughts about that. What was kind of interesting to me is that Al-Anon, like when the Warlock Lord met Al-Anon, he's like old friend, so it's like they knew each other before he was a Warlock Lord, and it seems like the same thing for Coughlin. But I wonder, is that something they'll ever dive into? Like, all we know is that obviously, like, the Warlock Lord went down the wrong path. That's kind of much like the Dagdamor. That's about it. We never really got to know why or how they went down that wrong path. Like, what went down to kind of make that happen. Maybe that's something we could possibly potentially see in the future. I don't know. Just kind of the way it's like old friends, so it makes it seem like they were colleagues. Like, is he one of the last druids before Coughlin and Al-Anon? And also, since Coughlin did leave being a druid, is there ever a potential for him to be able to come back as one? It doesn't seem like it's like once you leave it, it's going forever. So, because that's the thing I was wondering about, but I guess it's like the whole druid sleep and leaving are so different things. So I guess you just lose your runes, and because Coughlin's a little different, because it seems like his is a combination of magic and science, but more so science. Well, he took what he knew from his days as a druid and kind of, I guess, recreated it from science. Because interestingly enough, he's the one who actually made the Blade of Shannara, which is kind of interesting. It's like, oh, Al-Anon never told you that? It's like, oh, that's pretty cool. So you're not just some random druid. You're like a pretty important druid. So all those things that went down in these episodes, for one, was Eritrea struggling with the Moraith. It ends up, like, the red one ends up possessing her. Kind of figured as much with what we saw of it. Even before that was also happening, we did see that, like, she's gotten, like, I don't think that was just I don't know whether that was her as an Armageddon child or whether that was just the wraith that was already inside of her, but she was tossing Lyria up and down and against the wall like she was nothing. It's like, holy crap, like, I don't know which side, whether that's the Armageddon child or the Moraith, or whether that was like a combination of the two. And also, like, basically, I'm skipping ahead, but obviously when she gets unpossessed later on, like, how only one of them came out, so did that Moraith absorb the other one that was already inside of her, or did she fight it off? Because there was no, because sadly, I don't think Will ever found out the fact is that she killed all those chosen. So it was like, what does that mean for Arbalon when that's all said and done? Like, the fact that she killed all those chosen. I mean, they show that one particular body, but I would assume that means she caught up with the others and killed them too. But it could have just as easily mean like, well, she only killed that one and the others got away. I don't know. Because that one particular girl was the one that was still staying behind and saw Eritrea getting possessed. But like I said, I kind of get more of a feeling like, yeah, they were all killed. So, but I don't know. There's also the whole thing with Lyria, like, obviously she being the literal key to opening the way to Heaven's Well. Like, there's a whole aspect of what it looks like. It looks like, obviously, it's almost like the necklace around her neck was like the jewel, like the lock, and then her eye was the key. But I wonder, would there ever be anything beyond it? Is it just because of obviously the whole royal bloodline aspect of like, oh, well, her ancestor like set up the Silver River or whatever it's called, the whole Heaven's Well situation, set that up in the first place. So also I wonder, does that since that happened, does that mean like she has magic in her too that maybe she hasn't tapped into, I'm curious about, like, would that be something we see going forward, or would it just be like, well, she serves that purpose and there's not, like, obviously she's a queen now, obviously, but that's about it. It's also interesting too because Will ends up tearing Marith about the whole fact is that's like, well, you're kind of queen of Arbalon now. She's like, well, you wouldn't know. I'm supposed to be a druid. And Will's like, well, fate has different plans for you because remember, I was supposed to be a healer and here I am, kind of quote unquote hero and everything. So the battle kind of turned out the way I thought it would. I wasn't expecting Will to get stabbed like he did. I was like, oh wow, are they about to like kill him? I was like, oh, Mira's going to pick up the blade and finishes, but it's like, no, she ends up using her powers and throwing it to Will, who ends it, but then ultimately has to sacrifice himself. It's like, dude, is every season going to end with like sacrifices? That sucks. But it's, to be fair, it's like it was already set up. It's like, no, like it was almost like the El Kreese was trying to prepare him for it. And also because, Shay said it himself too. It's like, I couldn't make that sacrifice because of, Hetty, as well as the potential, like you, like the future thought of you. So it's like, ultimately it would have meant costing him. It's like, I had a feeling it was going to be something like that, but not in a way that it ended up transpiring with him going into the water to basically purify the waters. Because, I wonder what that would have looked like going forward. Like if the Warlock Lord had able to spread, like infesting the heavens well, because that's basically the centerfold of all magic, and it's like ultimately if the dam had opened up, it would have infected all waters across the four lands. So what would that have really looked like? Would his powers have meant like increased triple fold by that, or what? Not triple fold, I'm sure to a much higher degree, but I'm curious like to what effects would that have led to. I mean, it sucks because it's like Meredith and Will had that moment. Kind of reflects the whole Amber Lee situation too. Like they had their moment, but this is kind of like a last minute thing. It's kind of not as bad, the whole Amber Lee situation. It's like Amber Lee knew what was happening before they got back to Arbalon. In this situation, Will didn't figure out. I was like, okay, so this is what part I'm supposed to play, because he saw the whole vision thing, and I'm wondering what does that mean too, because he saw obviously what happens to Al-Anon and what happens to Meredith, but they were covered in blood. It's like, I guess it's one of those things where it's like, it's the potential future. It doesn't mean things are necessarily going to play out like that, but they can. So nothing is set in stone. I think that's what that's kind of supposed to say. But when it was all said and done, obviously Lyria becoming queen, I did appreciate the fact that she asked Eritrea to be her wife, to be her queen. I was like, dude, that's like, whoa, moving up in the world, huh? Because I was also thinking like that'd be kind of interesting, like also like, because ultimately we still don't know which path Meredith decides to do, because Arbalon still doesn't have a king or a queen, and it's like she's also a druid, and it's like, because like the way Al-Anon was making it seem like, and that's something I brought up last episode. It's like, well, doesn't like her duties as a druid kind of trump her duties as a queen? But it also, Arbalon needs a leader, so it's kind of like, I don't know where to go with that. But for Eritrea, she can't be with Lyria until she learns how to control this whole thing. And something I'm curious about too, and maybe this is something we could see in the future, is I don't remember them, like Coughlin, ever saying that she was the last of the Armageddon children. Did he say that? I don't remember. Because if not, that might be something we see going forward too. Is like that there are other people like her. I mean, we saw what happens really. I mean, what happens to her as an Armageddon child now? Like, I mean, demons have kind of been wiped out now, and obviously the wraiths are gone. So I was like, what does that mean for her going forward? Or will we see her tapping more into her powers? Like, would that be what we saw? Like I said, was that the wraith, or was that herself? Like, does she have like superhuman strength that once she taps into it, like, I think it's going to be that medium that she's going to have to find. Like, she's going to have to learn how to control the darkness while kind of holding on to that light. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure like going forward, because each season we're learning a little bit more about Eritrea. We really didn't know too much about her in season 1, but now we learned more about who she was, her mom being on the run. I think that's something we'll see going forward. We still don't know anything about her dad at all, because a big part of this season was diving more into Will's past, really. Well, Will, Eritrea, and Meredith's whole like family situations. That actually played like a bigger, actually when you break it down, like a big theme this season was family, so. And obviously at the end you have Coughlin being there to kind of train them, because you have Eritrea and Meredith, and it's like, okay, so where do we go from here? But then she feels Will, because he had given her the elf stones. I was like, oh, so are we shifting it so that she's like, if going forward, would she be like a main protagonist? Like, would she kind of step up to that main role, her and Eritrea? Which I would assume so. Like, I was like, would the story shift? I'll be 100% about them or what? I mean, because the question is like, where does it go beyond this? I mean, most of the evil has been taken care of, but I think the whole El Kreese situation could be repeated given enough time. I'm sure it's a situation where there will be more evil to rise, but I'm curious in what shape or forms. I mean, I'm sure like the Crimson has already been taken care of. I think going forward is going to be more about uniting the four lands, no longer being separated, doing their best to come together after such things. I mean, because it seems like the Warlock Lord was like the last big baddie to take care of, but it's like you really don't know. But the question is, I thought was kind of fascinating is the end where we see that Will isn't dead. We see him waking up in a different land, but there's all these different there's what do I call it again? Furies kind of flying up in the air. Immediately my brain goes, so was he teleported to what was known as the Forbidding? Because the moment they removed that demon from the wraith from within Eritrea, that's where Coughlin was sending it. So it's like, whoa, so does that mean, like, what is that? Is that the world that demons originate from? Is that kind of like a final ditch middle finger from the Warlock Lord, or was it just diving into the blood and it just there was enough of his magic and blood there and power to transport Will there? Like, is he there in a more spiritual form, or is he there in a physical form? It seems like a physical form since he has the blade of Shannara with him. So I mean, obviously, like, I'm not sure if this is getting renewed for a third season. I would hope so. I do know that the show is obviously based on a set of books. It's technically a trilogy. It wasn't originally written like a trilogy. I do remember reading that it was basically packaged like one afterwards when it was all said and done. But it's not really a trilogy. But I don't know whether it's a situation of like every season is one of the books. So at the very least, I would think and hope there's at least one more season. But I'm curious to see what they would do with it. Like, obviously, this whole forbidding world, I guess it'd be about trying to get Will back and what the consequences would be for doing that. Because as we can see, there's like a lot of demons in that world. So it's like maybe I mean, especially if Will's there, there's probably a good chance that Al-Anon might be sealed off in that world too. Because, like, what, just because of what the Warlock Lord said about, like, oh, like, I'm sending you to the third circle of the forbidding. So that's immediately where my brain goes. So it doesn't seem like it's like especially with the War Wraith, it didn't seem like it was destroyed. It was teleported back to what I guess is its world. Maybe the forbidding is more like maybe not necessarily an afterlife, but maybe it is a demon's world. Maybe it's more like an in-between. Maybe it's something kind of similar to Limbo. Like I say, there's so many questions like what that would mean going forward. Like I say, where would Meredith go? Like, will she take up her responsibilities as queen or a druid or both? And something else had to come across my mind. Nothing ever came about it, but I was like, I'm surprised nothing happened from the fact of the matter is there was that period of time where the Warlock Lord's blood had run through the Heaven's Well and was at the dam and everything, right? Well, let's not forget that people who are like, people's bodies are down there. I get like, what happens to those bodies? Like Tamlin's body's down there, Anders' body is down there. So then the question becomes like, I was like, oh, so is something going to happen to them? But nothing ever. Like, I thought like the water was going to stay like that at the end of the season, like with his blood. I thought something like that happen, and maybe we'll see Ander and Tamlin return, but they're evil or something and possessed by his blood. Still a possibility for something like to happen, but I mean, I would doubt it. Like, I don't know what happens after the bodies are pushed out. I guess they're just kind of like washed away, but it just like all that water is connected. But maybe that's something that's not bothered being like really thought about, Much like the whole wraith that's inside of Eritrea, like whether that died when did the other one fuse with it? Did she end up fighting it off, but still being controlled by the darkness in it? Like, was more the impulse there, but the wraith itself was already dead? Or like I said, did it combine with the other? Questions like that. So, like I said, not sure if it's getting renewed for a third season. I would really hope so, because I'd love to see what they would do with it. Like, continuing with these characters. Obviously, Jax is a general now, and, which fits him very well. It seems like he's set up in Lee, but it's like, not less that's supposed to be like, well, no, he's set up in Arbalon. He's there kind of acting as a guard in Arbalon, but it's like, I'm unsure like how the whole, like, where things fall now. Like, like I said, once again, Arbalon is without a king. Like, we still haven't really gone back to see the condition, 100% the condition that Arbalon was in. We saw some of the Chosen were dead in that whole situation, so... Also, the whole aspect of the magic users, obviously, like I thought I was kind of alluding to it earlier. I don't remember if I completed my thought about it, but even if I did, I'll kind of reiterate it here. It's the whole aspect of like, well, we saw that there were some people that kind of flowed along with Riga about the whole idea of blaming magic. Well, it's like, well, the magic kind of saved the world again. But then again, it's like, well, it wouldn't need to be saved if it wasn't for an evil person with magic being banned and resurrecting someone else evil with magic, the Warlock Lord. So I'm wondering, will we still see more of that, like the persecution of people with magic going forward or not? Also, what about Riga? Like, they introduced the aspect of people who have bloodline from a bloodline that is immune to magic. I feel like that's something we'll kind of see more of going forward too, maybe. So I don't know. I'd love to see what they did. Like, obviously, those of our characters still remaining, like where the stories would take us in a third season. I mean, because each season we're stepping into more and more lands. Because obviously, a big part of season one, they dealt mainly with like one of the big places. Obviously, you cut back to is Arbalon. This season is just some villages as well as Lee were the main spots. Also, was everyone in the conclave that they were hiding in? Like, obviously, that they were at like Lyria and Eritrea and Coglin were at the beginning of the season. Like, were all of them wiped out? Because you never really cut to anyone else. I mean, you did see people running, so it's like, no, not everyone's dead. It is sad that that boy ended up dying. I guess that was kind of to show you just how the Warlock Lord hides from no one. There was also that moment too that Coglin, it was just kind of one of those little things you caught where Coglin hearing that Merith is Alanon's daughter, it kind of hit him because it's like the whole like Druid thing is supposed to make it so you don't have kids because Coglin doesn't have any. That's why he treats Eritrea like a daughter. So, because even that's still a mystery to Alanon. It's like, how did that happen? It's like the Druid sleep is supposed to make it so that he's not supposed to be able to have kids. So that was kind of a thing. It's like, I wonder, once again, it's probably one of those things that like it happened, leave it at that. It's kind of like a miracle, you know? So, like I said, overall, a great season finale. Like I said, I'd be so interested to see what they would do if given a chance with a third season. What kind of story would they tell? What will we get? Obviously, probably get introduced to new characters too, and obviously the return of old ones, much like we did this season. Also, quickly too, since I'll kind of before I really end this up, and also luckily, this also means this whole situation don't have to worry about a love triangle situation per se, because it's like, well, Merith and Will, and then it's Lyria and Eritrea. So it's like, oh, you never have to worry about things kind of getting too complicated because there's like the whole love triangle situation in season one. Also, that does cement that there is no return for Amberly. It's like her, which is super sad to think about because it's like, but it's like, it is a situation that Will himself admitted. His like, the past is the past, and we have kind of like stopped living in the past and live today. It's something that, his talk with Amberly during the last episodes kind of taught him that. So, just kind of a final thing I just want to kind of throw in there at the last second. So, just something that was randomly in my mind. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.